Welcome to the Chaplain's Assistant's Motor Pod. I'm your host, Gary, and this is the 10th episode where I discuss what's going on in my world of G.I. Joe, if it's news or recent acquisitions or new items, and also at the end we take a look at a vehicle or playset from my collection as I am currently cleaning up my headquarters or my pit or my basement or that mess that just needs to be done. And this week, open up and look at issue 286, the latest issue from IDW, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. And also, we're going to close out the episode by taking a look at the classic 1982 G.I. Joe VAMP with Clutch. Now, this episode is taking place currently in the Marsh of New Jersey because, like my FedEx packages, there's really no good reason to be here. But here we are. We're just outside New York City. We're just outside the Chaplain's Assistant's motor pool in Staten Island, New York. You know, just far enough away, but not there yet. As I just said, I did order a couple things off of Mercari, my new favorite app to kind of find good deals on G.I. Joe things that I don't have yet in my collection. They have been shipped, but FedEx, because they're both coming FedEx, hasn't gotten to my house yet, and some of them have taken over a week to get here. Could say they're lost. Probably not. They are showing scans. It's just taking forever to get here. Ongoing COVID complications affecting the supply chain and logistics of delivery. So hopefully those will be in by next podcast, and I'll talk a little bit about some more 90s goodness coming my way. I finally got my hands on issue 286 of G.I. Joe Real American Hero from IDW a week ago. And I have had time to read it a couple times. And I've read it a couple times because not only one am I taking time to talk about it here on my podcast, but also because it's actually enjoyable. It's one of the better recent issues. Before we dive in, Tom Waltz does mention on the letters page that he believes this is Andrew Griffith's best work, and I would agree. Tom Waltz probably should have promoted this issue a little bit more, because yes, this is Andrew Griffith's best work yet on art duties with Larry Hama on the G.I. Joe series. Andrew has done the last 5 out of the 6, and you could definitely see an improvement as he's gotten more of a handle of how Larry scripts and how the characters interact. Starting with the cover of the issue, Cover A is the interconnecting cover by Freddie Williams. Now, Freddie Williams has been doing some interconnecting covers for the past couple of arcs, and they are really good. However, on this issue being Cover A, and this issue will spotlight Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes is on the cover. Cover B by Alex Sanchez is a great anime stylized, like mid-90s gritty anime cover of Storm Shadow. That should have been Cover A, and this interconnecting cover should be Cover B. That being said, there's also Cover C, the retailer incentive, which is a sketch by Larry Hama of the Long Range Recon Team minus Wade Collins. Now, I kind of recognize this artwork from a diptych that Larry did in 2016 that he sold on eBay for, I want to say, around $1,500, maybe even more. It is an absolute treat to have that cover in my collection. I have all 3 because I do support the brand, but also because it is really cool to collect all the covers. Not hiding my enthusiasm for this issue. Now, like I said, the Freddie Williams cover, interconnecting, should have been Cover B. The Alex Sanchez's cover should have been Cover A, and it is, I want to say, like Fist of the North Star kind of style, if you remember that, or Ninja Scroll, with Storm Shadow leaping off the page. Really good. Just a nice shot. Awesome artwork. Now, inside the book, you know, we have Larry Hama write as the writer, and we have Andrew Lee Griffith as the artist. Layouts are great. Andrew's layouts have greatly improved over the 5 of the last 6 issues that he's done. And the only criticism I'm going to offer on his art is he is a guy that maybe shouldn't be inking his own work. I think an inker over his pencils would add another perspective and also add a chance to take his pencils and up. His pencils are tight and his pencils are great. Again, I'm one of those guys, especially after Dead Game issue number 5, where you really see the power of an inker over a penciler and how it elevates the scripting on the page. Brown is doing the colors as usual, keeping everything uniform, and he has been an awesome colorist the entire run he's been doing. Neil Uteki, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, doing the lettering, solid work. And, then the rest of the editing team, Tom Walt, senior editor, Megan Brown, editor, and then research specialist Diana Davis. The issue opens up with Scarlet asking Stalker about how they met Storm Shadow. And it seems a reasonable request. And this late in the series, she has gotten all that she's ever needed to know about Snake Eyes from the man himself. But now she's asking about Storm Shadow. And it's kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of late to be asking because, of the relationship. But as a way to bring this story in, now, while it is going to be a Storm Shadow-centric story, it is also can be said it's really a long-range recon team story. It opens up in Vietnam. Now, one of the other things that I thought was happening in the series was they were moving to more of that sliding time scale that Marvel is famous for. So to go back to Vietnam this late, and we are now almost 50 years from our leaving of Vietnam, and Vietnam veterans are at best in their late 60s. Where I'm not going to be too critical on that, but it is kind of at this point where Captain America got frozen in time so that his origin is still in World War II. Leaving the long-range recon team as Vietnam, while it is definitely a product of that era, the long-range recon patrol as a unit would eventually get, for lack of a better term, phased out or not known officially by that name. Stalker really is telling the story of before he became the sergeant on the long-range team. It opens up with the guys meeting Storm Shadow for the first time, as Storm Shadow is one of 2 survivors of another LRP team coming back. And because Wade Collins, Dick Saperstein, Raymond Escobedo, and their sergeant were down a guy, they absorb Tommy Arashikage, known as Fresno on this old team, now just wants to be called Tommy. And it's organic. And I will say this about Larry Hama, is that when Larry is talking about real world warfare, when talking about camaraderie inside a unit, you're absolutely in his wheelhouse. You can definitely sense a comfort with describing things and scripting and getting the characterizations of these men true to form. This is a sandbox he's comfortable in, and he hasn't really used the LRP team for storytelling much in the series so far. It's been bits and pieces here and there. This is a great time to bring them back and tell a new story about a cast of characters that we already know a bit about, but we can get more. And the one thing that's still true for the beginning of the issue is Snake Eyes isn't talking. He's very stoic. He's already known as a badass. And the other thing, too, is because now we got Snake Eyes, while he is a character in the story, it's not central about him. But what we're going to do is really get into the meat of Tommy's and Snake Eyes' relationship. And Tommy, because he's the new guy, he hasn't gotten the cold shoulder from Snake Eyes yet. We have this new wedge to learn more about some of our favorite characters. One of the good things is the fact that because Snake Eyes is already this badass in Vietnam, Tommy, because we know from prior, storytelling that he's been training with his ninja clan family in Japan before going off to Vietnam, he's already recognized that Snake Eyes has this, the way of the warrior, the chi, the essence inside of him. So he's able to, work with him and also bring Snake Eyes a little bit out of that shell, because for whatever reason, Snake Eyes is closing himself off to the world inside. And while you could say that this is kind of like, well, Storm Shadow's kind of, the issue isn't really about Storm Shadow, but more about Storm Shadow's relationships, whereas everybody else is part of it, and especially where it's really going to center around Storm Shadow's and Snake Eyes' relationship, which I do like. But in the middle of the issue, Larry breaks something that he hasn't done since issue 102. Snake Eyes speaks. And it's kind of like that Silent Bob moment in a movie where, the whole movie goes along and then Silent Bob makes that one sentence or one paragraph. It's great because I think it's time to tell a new story with Snake Eyes. Yes, we've had this movie where, Snake Eyes speaks and people have already been angered by that. And, and maybe a little bit of this is Larry saying, well, screw you guys. He could speak before he got his accident, so here he is. He's going to speak. He's going to say a sentence, which is refreshing. I found it refreshing. I liked it. I enjoyed it. And it's not too much to absolutely obliterate, 285 previous issues of the Silent Master. So the guy's quiet. But now he's not silent. When you're in a unit, you got to talk. It doesn't matter if you like the guy in your unit or not. You guys are in a job, you guys are doing a job, and you have to communicate, or else, you guys are watching for each other's lives. Your lives are in each other's hands, so you have to communicate. So it makes only sense that Snake Eyes finally says something. This is one of the better issues, but it does have a couple detractors where the big thing for me is because Larry's in this comfortable sandbox of his and he's telling a new story and some things are flowing really well. We do get a Larry Hama trope of, Snake Eyes is just going ballistic on the M60. A few issues ago with Netho's Diaz drawing, Larry used the trope of, shooting out the M60 to get a barrel change. And then also shooting the M60. And then again, Snake Eyes goes again and shoots the M60 to the point where he just keeps feeding it ammo belts of 7.62 NATO. And then now it's glowing white hot and you can actually see the bullets passing through the barrel. And, and he goes further on where now the machine gun isn't even effective anymore because the barreling is so shot that the gas pressure from the gunpowder isn't even propelling the bullet as fast as it should be. So he's in the sandbox, he's comfortable, and yeah, he's falling a little bit back on an old habit. And the book ends, with Stalker just coming on to the team, in a Huey. It's a pretty tight issue. I've read it a few times, and it's solid. If I was to grade this comic on a scale of 0 to 5 Medevac Hueys on the Pina Comics scale, where you can go down to quarter measurements, this would be a solid 4. It's really good. It has readability, which I really want in a comic book, especially if I'm buying the physical issue. This is one of Larry's better issues as of late, and I hope he keeps the momentum going. And the next issue is a spotlight on the new Joes, Sherlock, Molto, and Black Hat, aka the newbies. And I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a nice change of pace. Maybe it'll get me more excited for those 3 people. I don't know, but I'm really happy that this issue of 286 is out, and I love it. And now for the review of one of the most iconic vehicles of the G.I. Joe line, the one that spawned multiple retools and redecos and recolors and variations and is still being produced today, the G.I. Joe VAMP, with its driver, Clutch, the man from Asbury Park, New Jersey, where potentially my FedEx packages are. But it is an absolute epic vehicle. It is simple enough to be perfect for this 10th episode celebration of getting through this podcast with you guys, you listeners. Thank you for coming. But the VAMP is awesome, and I'm here to talk about it right now. Now, to start off, we got Clutch. One of the great things about Clutch is, he's E4. His primary MOS is transportation, but his secondary is in infantry. So he is perfect for the G.I. Joe team, especially the OG-13. He was racing on the street prior to enlistment. He was kind of a troublemaker. He was living a life of excitement and adventure that racing does involve, that does adrenalize. You look at some of his training, advanced infantry, covert ops, executive bodyguard school, ranger school, and he's actually qualified expert on, some really good NATO, machine guns, the M14, the M16, the M1911A1, the M3, the M79, and the M60. So he's actually able to shoot the same hog as Snake Eyes. So he's well-rounded. The pistol, the M14 carbine, and the M16. Just a great soldier. Well, he was based on what Larry thought of Bruce Springsteen. I always got the Fonzie vibe. Greasing his hair with motor oil. Rarely shaves. Well, that's more of a Springsteen. And chews on the same toothpick for months, and Clutch still calls women chicks. So he is testosterone. He is, manly. He is a member of G.I. Joe. And, he's molded in green. He has the leather, I don't want to say chaps, but like the leather vest over his shirt, in the holster. And it's a lovely chest sculpt. I've always loved Clutch as one of my OG-13s. He's one of my favorites. And, 1982, the straight arm, and then 1983 with the swivel arm. And lately, the swivel 83 version 1.5 swivel arms have been going absolutely nuts. And I got my Clutch when I bought my VAMP about 9 years ago, and I didn't even get the right VAMP when I bought him, but he's one of the guys. When I got back into collecting, he's still near and dear to me. And when I say I didn't get the right VAMP, it was because I got the Sears VAMP from 1984, which looks very similar, and the vintage toy store didn't know the difference. And I'll touch upon that. Clutch is awesome. I don't know what more you can say with that black beard of his, the reuse of parts, but with the unique chest. He's aces in my book. So the VAMP, the Jeep replacement, which many people are like, oh yeah, it's the Lamborghini Cheetah. And yeah, it's kind of the Lamborghini Cheetah. But the other thing was the Lamborghini Cheetah was also based on something called the FMC XR311, a prototype military vehicle that they actually made about 10 of. And the XR311 also had optional missile tubes on the roof and potentially M60 machine guns also mounted on it. Here really is the genesis, and the Cheetah was found to be like a copy of that and actually got sued for it. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the Cheetah because the visual cues are more there from the Cheetah. The big thing is the XR311 was more of a two-seater, or kind of like if you're familiar with cars like a Datsun 240Z or a Porsche 911, where it looks like it had a rear seat, but it wasn't useful for anybody over the age of 7. The Cheetah was actually a 4-seater, which would have been a better replacement and also more of the direct competitor for the Hummer that eventually would win the contract. Now, the Cheetah also, to get into this, it was considered quote-unquote rather heavy at 4,500 pounds because it was powered by a Chrysler 5.9 liter, which makes sense because there was a truck called the MA80, which was a Dodge 1.25 ton, which was based on the Dodge 3/4 ton civilian pickup truck. And that was powered by a 5.2 liter Chrysler V8. And from personal experience with both of those engines, the 5.9 is a lot better, but it's a lot thirstier. And the late 70s just plain stunk for gasoline engines in the United States of America, with tightening emissions controls and the manufacturers not knowing how to make a big engine be emissions compatible in that environment. Now, Lamborghini did partner with Chrysler on this, and Chrysler was a big military contractor, especially just having an MA-80 contract with the United States government for all those pickup trucks. However, the one thing in Chrysler's stable that probably could have or should have been put in this Lamborghini Cheetah was probably their turbine engine. Now, most people think turbine engines, think jet engines. Yes, and Chrysler was the pioneer of putting a jet engine in cars. And they had been working on them since the 50s. They even put them in a test fleet in the mid-60s in 50 cars. But they had put them in cars as late as 1980. And they fit in the same area as that 5.9 liter V8. But because it's a turbine, it could run on gas, diesel, perfume, you name it. You're in the suck. You have a turbine engine, you could dump whatever it is. Also, fuel supply. If you're dealing with logistics issues with fuel, well, I got diesel. Okay, pour it in and let's get the heck out of here. I have, whiskey. Pour it in here and pour it in there, and if it's a flammable liquid, you can pour it in a turbine and it will find a way to burn it. May not be as powerful, but it will find a way to burn it, and you could get your an old infantry thing that I learned from reading G.I. Joe was wheels do beat heels. So anyway, that's a little thing about the Cheetah and the XR311. Don't forget the XR311, and I'll probably put some pictures with this later on in social media and other avenues as well. I'll get to more of that later. But taking a look at the original OG 1982 VAMP, it's green. Has a green steering wheel on a gray dash. This is the toy that brought a model aesthetic to it, where Revell actually licensed to build a model of it, and Hasbro said, "You're not making it to scale as our toy." When you have the toy in hand, it's like I said, I love G.I. Joe vehicles because they're like snap type model kits, which is perfect for a younger kid. Anyway, you have a wonderfully detailed gray dash and that green steering wheel. You have a shifter lever in the center console. There's little nods of details here and there, and it's wonderful in the seat. You have like a little radio or phone device in between the driver and passenger seat, and you have some wonderful detailing behind. Also, the Cheetah was rear engine, which didn't work in its favor for quote-unquote handling, where Lamborghini is known for building mid-engine cars, and their Cheetah would eventually become front engine with a V12 from essentially the Countach. And you got that same dynamic here in the VAMP. Now, the VAMP also has the twin laser cannons over what would be the engine bay with the two vents on each side. It has, if yours isn't broken, it has a little lever on the right side or passenger side where you pull it back and push it forward. The barrels pulse. The left one goes up front, and then the left one goes behind the right one. and it elevates up and down, swivels left to right, and if you get it into the right orientation, it pops right out because it has a single keyway in there. Moving into the back, the clips, the gray clips, double as where you put your stickers on for the rear tail lights. In between those is essentially a luggage rack for your 2 jerry cans for your gasoline. And the jerry cans, pretty cool, and they come out and clutch can hold them, or whomever has the unfortunate duty of getting fuel. And below that is your tow hook, which comes in handy, especially when you think about what it came with in 1983, the SMS, and also the HAL, and many trailers since. You know, you have gray plastic over a metal axle. It's pressed in there, not designed to come apart. And you have the green hubcaps that are glued in. And you move forward, you have a gray front bumper, which sometimes is broken. And then you move up a little bit, and then you have a little green bumperette. Now, this is something that when I look at it now, I understand why it's a 2-piece, but when I'm, a little more inexperienced, it's like, well, why wouldn't it just be part of the same mold as the rest of the body? It kind of doesn't make sense. And also, it's pretty straight. In future molds, it would get changed to, in the VAMP Mark II, they had fog lamps. In the Stinger variation, it's a completely different bumper altogether. But in a good sense, that also allows some customization on the original vehicle. You have a winch, molded behind it, non-working, but still it's there, and winches are cool, especially for off-roading. And then you move further up and over the hood, and you have the little slats for the radiator. And then finally, you have the little machine gun that is perched right in front of the driver. So you have a machine gun that clutch or whomever's driving the VAMP can operate, while the passenger can operate the laser cannon from the rear. Also, there are these 2 wonderfully molded hood clips to simulate the fact that the front hood would open up with a forward flip design. And then you have the roll cage. Now, the roll cage is glued in place. The one thing I've never been a huge fan of with the VAMPs is the roll cage. The roll cage is glued in. The glue sometimes eventually deteriorates over time and separates. It's just something I've had lots of experience with. It's just the one thing that I'm always careful of when I'm looking at VAMPs. The interior is all gray in the same mold as the rest of the thing. And the one of my big problems with vintage VAMPs, and I will never not harp on it, is the fact that the seats are not low enough. So when Clutch is sitting into it, his head is level to the top of the roll bar, or maybe even a little bit over it, depending on how you scooch his legs in. I know why it's like that as a toy, but in later variations like the Stinger, Tiger Sting, VAMP Mark II, it becomes kind of an annoyance with getting the figures in and out, especially as the plastic has gotten older. And that is one thing that the modern VAMPs, the 25th anniversary and beyond, have done, is they've lowered the seat to make room for the taller figure. However, what that also does, it just makes the vintage figure that much nicer. So that is one area where I do prefer the modern VAMP to the classic VAMP. The other thing I will say about the classic VAMP is there is the Sears Dreadnought Ground Assault set, which uses essentially the Stinger, a recolored Stinger variation. And I had a couple Dreadnoughts trapped in there for months because I was afraid of taking them out and breaking the clips on the doors and stuff on that. Now, I will say this about the original VAMP, is it kind of was re-released in 1984 as part of a Sears set without clutch and with the HAL, the heavy artillery laser. There are 3 variations of that, and if you're not careful, somebody might mark it as a regular VAMP and sell it to you with a clutch, like how I got mine. And there's 3 variations. The big difference is there's little tabs on the roll bar. A really great video detailing this from Hooded Cobra Commander 788. I'll put the link in the description below. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the VAMP? It is a must in just about every G.I. Joe collection. I really can't think of a reason why you wouldn't have a VAMP in the collection. It is such an iconic Jeep. It's such an iconic general purpose vehicle. You know, the VAMP, vehicle, attack, multi-purpose. It is G.I. Joe. It's there at the beginning, and it's still here today. I have multiples, and I think everybody should have, if they have a G.I. Joe collection, they should have at least have one. It's not huge. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Put it with clutch. Well, that closes out this episode of the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. I have been your host, Gary, a member of the Pint O Comics family, as these guys from Extensive Enterprises like to remind me here in the New Jersey Marsh. But that's why I got a VAMP. I'm getting in, and I'm getting the heck out of Dodge, and I'm going back to Staten Island. Got to catch that ferry. Don't let them charge you for a ticket. It is free. For more Pint O Comics, you can find them at pintocomics.com. As for me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChaplainJoePod, or drop me an email, iggaryv@gmail.com. Also, with the advent of the 9th episode, I have now put this stuff on YouTube. I have a very low budget production that goes with, for visuals, with the podcast, and that is tied to my channel, G.I. Gary, or at iggaryv on YouTube. Also mirrored on the Pint O Comics YouTube channel as well. Also, I'll be doing Throwback Thursdays on my channel, loading up some G.I. Joe reviews on off weeks from my earlier Pint O Comics reviews. If you've liked what you've heard, don't forget to leave a review where you heard this podcast or watched it on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or through Google Play, Spotify, or even here on Anchor.fm, who hosts the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod, leave a review, give it 5 stars, give it 1 star. Feedback is great. It helps the podcast get bigger and, most importantly, better. And with that all out of the way, I have more missiles to pack to deliver to the masses. And with that, I'm out of here, and see ya.